well. An early start for Newcastle United here at St James's Park today. High noon showdown against Chelsea, and I'm in the ground now nice and early, and it is absolutely scorching already. We don't normally experience the sun shine on the press box like this, so we'll have to be careful with the heat today. But the heat at kick-off time should be pretty intense. In terms of the atmosphere, there's a free drink on offer for the fans getting in here early enough, and I think realistically now for Newcastle United, this is their season in the Premier League. This is their season in terms of getting into those Champions League places, and this is the opportunity to try and potentially get into third place this afternoon. Huge game against Chelsea, as I say. Chelsea reaching the Europa Conference League final. Newcastle already in that competition as it stands, but they want more. They want to upgrade that position. This is their chance to do that, keep everything in their hands going in the last two games, and today, with the atmosphere right, they can absolutely get their hands on that Champions League place.
Minutes to kick off here at St James's Park. For the big game, we'll do a recap on your team news next.
So a huge win for Newcastle United here against Chelsea, and it was a nail-biting affair. Newcastle did give themselves a great start in this game, taking the lead after just 2 minutes. But after that, it wasn't exactly plain sailing. Chelsea dug in. They made life hard for themselves when Jackson got sent off. And at that point, with Newcastle up against 10 men, you wondered, could this be a really comfortable day for the Magpies? They were shooting downhill in the second half, but none of that seemed to have any bearing on the second half. Chelsea actually looked like the team with 11 men, and they really threatened Newcastle going into those closing stages. Nick Pope having to make a couple of big saves at the leader's end, and that really left Newcastle fans nervous until the 90th minute, when Bruno swept home a shot that took a deflection and sealed this 2-0 win. Newcastle are now in third place. They can even grab second next weekend, potentially if they beat Arsenal. We'll have to wait and see. But a great win for Newcastle in the end. Yes, it was nervous, it wasn't perfect, but Newcastle have done it. So in the end, that was a really good win for Newcastle United. No real sign of Newcastle choking now going into that final run-in, but I think today there were parts of that game where it was looking a bit intense. Second half particular, I thought was tough for Newcastle. They couldn't just seem to break Chelsea down. There was caution in the air, but I think they got there in the end. They'd done the job, and it sets them up nicely now for next weekend at Arsenal, where that's going to be some match down there, potentially a shootout for second place, going into the real part of the running. But today, for me, a few nerves on display. Great that they got the early goal to put Newcastle in control after just 2 minutes. Tonali with a really cool finish. I thought he was the coolest customer on the park today, and there was 3 or 4 players got Newcastle through the game today, but look, they just couldn't seem to kill the game. I think Isak again, not so much half-hearted, but trying things that he wouldn't normally try with some of his finishing. I mean, you never write him off, of course. He's got an unbelievable amount of goals this season, but just that clinical edge where Newcastle needed it, sadly was missing until right at the end, of course, when Bruno hits that shot, takes a deflection, and Newcastle go on to seal what was a great day in the office. So yeah, no big complaints from me. Couple of concerns going into those last 2 games. Just the concerns being the nervous part of it. But look, Newcastle might get over the line now, potentially, by other results. You don't know. But again, going to the Emirates, Newcastle have been there already this season and won. Arsenal have lost twice up here as well this season. They're not a team Newcastle fear anymore, and I think if we're totally honest today, it wasn't vintage, but it was fine. You know, they got the job done. That's what they'll need in the last 2 games. I don't think, you know, that Everton game now is going to mean a lot, but you never know. But today, thankfully, Newcastle got the job done. Eddie Howe seemed very happy afterwards. Big blow before the game. Kieran Trippier being missing for this one. Joe Willock also injured. It's going to be other players now stepping up to the plate, and I think, you know, they did that today. Even, you know, the players that came off the bench, Emil Kraft, you know, setting down a marker early on, getting involved in the scuffle, showing that he's prepared to put his head in where it hurts in this run-in. Lots of little signs that hopefully all add up and make one big sign at the end of the season, which is pointing the way to the Champions League. That's what Newcastle are looking for. So yeah, really pleased with it today. Hope it doesn't sound like I've been complaining. Just, as I say, a couple of little concerns with that second half performance, but you know, they got the job done in the end. It wouldn't have bothered me if they'd stumbled over the line and got a 1-0 win today. It wouldn't have bothered me one little bit, but just think that the stakes are very high now, and it is starting to show. And Newcastle now move on that game against Arsenal, hoping that they've pretty much done enough to get into the Champions League in those last couple of games.